Hey everybody, we're back. Well, sorta, but I'll explain. For those of you who don't know, I'm Brock from Brock's Performance, and my full-time job is being the president of Brock's Performance. People who watch our channel frequently realize that sometimes we have to have pretty long delays in between the content portion of Brock's Performance YouTube, simply because the work of Brock's Performance gets in the way and it has #1 priority. That being said, it's been a long time since we've had a full, long content video, and I want to thank all of our subscribers because, you know, generally when you go the time periods that we do, you'll lose a lot of followers. We actually picked up a couple thousand, which tells me that the people that watch the channel actually care about what we're talking about. For some reason, care about the words coming out of my mouth. So the least I can do is get some content to you while we're trying to improve the things that caused the delay. So anyway, longtime subscribers, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. It makes it a lot easier when I'm not getting hounded all the time. We need more content. We need more content. I know you do, and I want to give it to you. So thank you. Thank you very much. One of the things, if you do watch the channel and you pay attention to what's going on, our comments section is full of information. When a customer asks a question, me personally, Brock, I answer them all. So if you have any comments about any of our videos, please feel free to put them in the comments section so that we can address your issues. What I wanted to do, I was working on a weekend project, otherwise known as Brock helping out a friend who's pretty screwed and doesn't have any other way to get his motorcycle fixed. But as I was working on this weekend project, I went, you know, I get a lot of comments about clutches and transmissions in motorcycles, and that can get really long and drawn out. But really, they're sort of simple on the surface. And I think I found a pretty cool way to show the viewers what I'm talking about when I talk about different things: clutch, transmission, input shaft, output shaft, the things that go on in an engine that make it go forward. So I'm going to rearrange the camera here in a moment to give you guys a bird's eye view, but I'll give you just an idea about what I'm talking about. So this is a Gen 1 Suzuki Hayabusa engine, and I'm only using it because it just happens to be what I'm working on. It doesn't make any difference what motorcycle you have. They all function very similar to this. Unlike American V-twins like the Harley Davidsons, you've got the engine and the transmission separately that bolt together, and then they're held together through a primary chain. Engine goes up and down, goes through the clutch, the transmission. Next thing you know, your bike's moving forward. Well, the Japanese and the Europeans also have gotten very, very good at packing a whole lot of stuff that does a bunch of different jobs and does them very well into a small, very efficient package that might make you go, oh, well, that's not as difficult as I thought it would be. So through the powers of magical editing and AI and all that, okay, I'm kidding. This is what we call doing it old school. I'm just going to show you. All right, so I've got the camera zoomed up on the clutch, the transmission, and the crankshaft, which we're going to try to focus on the clutch and transmission. But in order to do that, I need to do a little bit of explaining on the crankshaft. The Hayabusa is an inline 4-cylinder, which means you've got 4 cylinders, 1, 2, 3, 4, all in a line. Each of those cylinders has a piston and a connecting rod. The piston's held to the connecting rod with a wrist pin. You've got the small end of the connecting rod, and you've got the big end of the connecting rod. So this is a inline 4 that is 180 degrees out of phase, which basically means you've got 2 pistons, and this is cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 4 that will be at top dead center, and then after the piston goes down, by the way, this engine spins, it spins clockwise from the right-hand side. So I'm sort of doing this as if I were sitting on the motorcycle. My left foot would be here by the shifter. My right foot would be down here underneath the clutch. Now, some bikes, that's different. They're switched over, but like I said, it's basically the same idea. The crankshaft spins clockwise. When it does, 1 and 4 go down, 2 and 3 go up. So they're 180 degrees out, which makes for a very smooth, very high revving engine. Now, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. When the crankshaft spins, when the engine is running, this is called the primary gear on the crankshaft. This is the harmonic balancer gear. We won't worry about that for now. This is the primary gear. So if you think about it, if your engine is running, this gear is spinning. If this gear is spinning, your clutch basket is also spinning with it. So you've got the primary gear. This is your clutch basket, which would be the clutch basket primary, the outer basket, and then the inner basket is here, but I'll show you that here in a minute. So if your engine is spinning, your clutch basket is spinning. Now, if you're in neutral, you see this spinning here in here, but this is all really just from friction. This is all lubed up, oiled up, and greased up. When you're parked and you're in neutral, obviously your front sprocket doesn't move, your rear sprocket doesn't move, nothing moves. Even though some of the gears inside have to move because they are connected from the clutch to, this is called the input shaft. The clutch sits on the input shaft. Power is transferred from the primary gear into the clutch, into the transmission input shaft. Then it goes through different gear ratios before, and which makes the output shaft spin faster or slower. And I will show you that here shortly. Spin faster or slower depending on what gear you're in. Right now we are in neutral. So we're in neutral. Our bike is running. We put the bike in gear to go. In order to do that, we're going to pull in on our clutch up on the lever. When that happens, either a cable or hydraulic fluid will go over here to something that presses the clutch. Now, if you've got a ZX14 or a BMW, you may have a mechanism here connected directly to the clutch basket that disengages and engages the clutch. On the Hayabusa, it's got a slave cylinder, pushes this rod through. But watch what happens when I push it. This is called the pressure plate, which puts pressure on the clutch. When I push that, see how that loosened up? Now, when that loosens up, you're able to spin. You can put the bike in gear, which we'll do here. And I want you to watch as I put the bike in gear. You're going to see this gear lock into this one. Before we get started into that, all of these gears have different ratios, because otherwise, if they just put a 6-gear ratio in, it'd be like you were trying to take off in 6th gear all the time. It would be very difficult. Watch this gear. When it comes over, and so we got to figure the engine's going to be spinning. Boom. Okay. That just engaged. Well, if you notice, there's a smaller gear, which is it's doing the exact same thing as a front sprocket. And then there's a larger gear, which is doing the same thing as your rear sprocket, obviously way back here. We've got the smallest front sprocket, the largest rear. We're in first gear. That is going to multiply torque so the bike is easier to take off with. Well, once you do that, of course, the bike will stall if you don't have the clutch pulled in. So if I've got the clutch pulled in, the engine is running, you can see nothing. Now that we're engaged in gear, nothing is happening. The transmission is not spinning. The clutch basket always will, because it's attached to these primary gears, and it has to spin if the engine is running. Well, as I let the clutch go, this pressure plate squeezes, and you've got drive and driven plates, which means you've got one plate that drives the input shaft and other ones that drive off of the outer basket. Well, when I let the clutch go, those are compressed by our clutch springs. So the amount of force that we have on that is determined by the clutch spring. Well, now watch what happens. Clutch pulled in, we're not moving. Clutch let go. Okay, now we're rolling. Assuming we didn't stall the bike just then, the bike is rolling. We're in first gear. Well, now I want to go to the next gear set. So how do I do that? I pull in on the clutch, I shift the lever. Now you can see we've gone out of first gear. We're in neutral, but we're trying to get into second. And I'm going to point out why I can't just flip these. You have to have a little bit of resistance on it. That's why if your bike's really hard to find neutral, if you got the clutch dragging or something, if it's moving just a little bit, it's going to automatically move these gears and help them fall into place just like that. So what we've done, this gear set is no longer engaged because this gear moved out of the way, so there's nothing engaging the first gear onto the output shaft drive. Now we've done very similar. Now we've taken this gear, slid it over, and now this was the smallest sprocket, this was the largest. Now we've moved up to the next largest sprocket on the front and the next smallest sprocket on the rear, which will allow the bike to go faster. We lost torque because we're not in this gear set anymore, but as far as speed, now the bike is going to go and it's going to maintain, it's going to keep going faster. Now I'm not going to go through all these because I want you to see how these work, but in a nutshell, this is the next, so this is first gear, this is the second gear set. I click into third. Now that gear slid over into here, same deal. You can see this gear is a little bit bigger on the front, a little bit smaller. Okay, we're gaining more speed now. We're not multiplying torque through gear reduction through the gears as much, but we're gaining speed. So now we're in third gear. We click, same deal just happened. We came out of third, this gear came over, boom, came into fourth gear. Now we're in fourth gear. Now I can show you, it'll be easier for you to see. When I go to shift, you see how this gear and this gear aren't exactly aligned. So when I go to shift, it can't really go because they're touching. Well, with just a little bit of movement, bam, it goes in. And then once it goes all the way in, the pressure helps pull it together. So now we're in fifth gear, same deal. So we want to get to sixth gear, and once we shift into sixth, we're going to come out of here and we're going to go to this gear set, which has the biggest front and the smallest rear. Same deal on this slight mismatch. Soon as it moves, boom, now we're in sixth gear and we're going as fast as the bike can go. But all we've basically done is the same idea as changing the chain, the front sprocket and the rear sprocket on the bike, but it's all done inside the transmission in this small little package. So it's like you switched the chain and sprocket each time. It's all just done in the engine, which I think is probably considerably, not probably, it is considerably easier to deal with something like this than today's modern automatic style transmissions in cars, which are very complicated. So let me catch your breath from that one and let me remove some stuff here that'll help you understand how this is happening. How do all these gears work and what makes these things slide back and forth? Let me get my act together here shortly, and I will be right back with the best way to show this to you. Okay, we're back. So we're in sixth gear. Now we want to go back down into neutral. So boom, we came out of sixth. Now we're in fifth. Now we're in fourth. Now we're in third. Now we're in second. Now we're in neutral. We are in neutral. So from that standpoint, how did all this happen? What is going on here? Probably easier to move the camera. Yeah, I'll go ahead and move the camera and I will show you what's happening here. All right, so I have the covers removed. So this becomes easier. This basically represents either your shift lever directly, like if you have a ZX14, or if you've got a later model bike, it's going to have a linkage that goes back to your rear set. Well, when you remove the cover, you see that it's a very simple little spring-loaded contraption, and its entire job, when you shift up or you shift down, these little things, we call them shifter paws, their job is to get caught on these pins and rotate the pins up or down, up or down. It's all this mechanism does. Well, when it does that, behind this is called your shift drum. And I want to put the camera back so I can show you better how that shift drum operates when we're shifting this lever or moving this mechanism. All right, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to remove the entire input shaft so that I can show you some different parts that are making all this happen. I know it's very difficult to see right now the way the camera is, but I will remedy that as soon as I get this stuff out of the way. The way these gears were moving is because there's something called a shift fork that is moving. They are what move the gears into the correct position. On your output shaft, on this particular bike, this is going to control gears 1 through 4, and on your input shaft, you've got one fork that is basically going to just control going into 5th gear and 6th gear. But let me just go ahead and get all of this out of the way right now. Engine spinning, we're in neutral. I'm just going to remove the entire input shaft so you can see how this shift drum and shift fork works. This is the high gear shift fork, and this is Brock's Performance billet shift shaft. The fork slides on the shaft, but can you see this little pin in here? That pin follows this groove, and I'm going to walk this transmission. Right now we're in neutral. I'm going to walk it up to 5th and 6th, but I want you to watch this groove. Remember, the shift drum is round. This groove is controlling this shaft, and this groove, or fork, and this groove is controlling this fork. So if I'm in neutral, I just want to go to 2nd, 3rd. You'll notice right now we're in 4th gear. So if the input shaft was in, this fork, watch this groove. When I move the transmission and I go to shift, now you can see that slot is going to follow that groove and push it over. That's what pushes the bike into 5th gear. And then when you click into 6th, you'll see it here. Same deal. Watch this fork move over this way. Now we're in 6th gear. So that's how that works. And if I if I go ahead and pull the rest of this transmission out, it's going to make things a little easier for you to see. Now you can see this particular shift fork slides in this groove. This shift fork slides in this groove, and it's almost all the way around. You can do that on race bikes. They don't do it on the street bikes. And then this groove controls this shift fork. I hope that was an easy enough explanation for how the transmission gets in and out of gears. I guess about the only thing that I haven't covered is exactly how does the transmission work, or the clutch, I mean. And since we have all of this out, I can show you very, very quickly. I have this stuff dummied up. I cut some springs to length that would allow me to show the operation of the clutch. But motorcycle clutches are so incredibly simple. You have springs that press what we call the clutch pack together. So let's pull this out. This is called your clutch throw out. There's a needle bearing here that keeps everything from galling, but you have a shorter tube over here, a longer tube all the way through. It pushes this. This moves this in and out. When it moves that in and out, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off all the way and just get it out of the way. Okay. The way these clutch baskets work, your fiber plates, they have little tabs that go in tabs on the outer basket. Your steel plates have little tabs that go into grooves on what we call the inner basket or inner clutch hub. So basically all we're doing is pressing these together or releasing them. When we press them together, the bike goes. When we release them, the bike stops. Now, there are a lot of different mechanical things, this is a very simple standard style clutch, meaning the slipper's been eliminated. This is just how motorcycle clutches have worked since they invented them back in the early 1900s. They're really, really simple. Well, how much force do you put on it? You put as much force as you need so the clutch doesn't slip. If you're a racer, you're probably going to want more. If you do a lot of street riding, you don't want your hand to work, hurt, you're probably going to want a little bit less. But that's all determined by the clutch pressure and clutch spring pressure, and that's something that we do at Brock's Performance for you if you buy any of our components. But from a functionality standpoint, really this is it in a nutshell. There's not crazy hydraulics going through caverns and valves and all kinds of that kind of stuff that goes on in cars. This is just a very simple mechanism that is very compact and very efficient. So I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. What I think I'm going to do, I'll get a little further into detail on the transmission. Why does my transmission jump out of gear? What can I do to fix it? And that kind of stuff. But I'm going to do that in another episode. So I hope you enjoyed this content. I hope it wasn't too much. I tried to make it as simple as I could. But I mean, you can see it is fairly simple. It's all sitting here. Now, if you get into the details of this stuff, okay, it's going to get more complicated, whether you want to know what back cutting a transmission is, if you want to know what lightening a crankshaft's about. That stuff all gets fairly detailed, and you can get crazy intricate with it. But that's not what we're here trying to do. I was trying to show you what a motorcycle clutch and a motorcycle transmission in today's modern motorcycles look like and how they function. I hope it helped you understand a little bit better. Until next time, I'm Brock from Brock's Performance. We'll see you then.